Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Remembering the Legendaries with Jim Irwin, the show that honors Wayne State University faculty and staff of the past, remembering their enormous contributions to making Wayne State the great university it is today. He's a local businessman, a best-selling author, and a published songwriter. He has 2 degrees from Wayne State and is honored as a distinguished university alumnus. Let's give a big welcome to our host, Jim Irwin.
Welcome everybody to the Remembering the Legendaries show, brought to you right from the heart of this wonderful Wayne State University, the University of Real People. Our show, Remembering the Legendaries, is honoring people who were the movers and shakers of this great university, who really made Wayne State University the university that it is, the great world-class place we're all in today. So our show today is going to honor one of those legendaries, probably right up there as one of the most legendaries. So we're starting out from the top. This man has been a student here at Wayne State. He's been on the faculty. He's been the chairman of a department that had several departments in it. He's a former high school teacher and debate coach. He's an expert in forensics and debate, as well as public address and all the other areas. And he's just a wonderful, down-to-earth person who also knows more about baseball than anybody here will ever know. So our show will feature a little bit about baseball. But please welcome, I'd like you to meet our guest today, our honoree, the legendary Ed Pappas. Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Check out that tie.
Yeah.
The baseball tie.
That's the only kind I have, Jim.
Oh, that's great. You know a little bit about baseball.
Just a little
bit. Yeah. But first, I got something. You know that place downstairs? They gave us a whole bunch of free coffee certificates.
Oh, that's great.
So you and I can share them for a free coffee. One of these gets you free coffee down there. And I thought that was pretty good. So
it's good.
For you and I to split. So let's split them up.
Let's split them
up. You do
the
honors.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, one for you.
Right. One for me.
One for me.
Right.
2 for you.
Right.
2 for me.
Yeah.
3 for you. 1, 2.
Wait.
What's the matter?
I'm not too comfortable with this. Something's wrong.
Well, you do it then.
I don't know what's wrong.
You do it.
It just doesn't look right to me.
I'm just doing it right.
You don't mind? Can I do it?
You do it.
You
Go
don't
ahead.
mind? All right. Okay.
I don't care as long as I get my coffee.
All right. All right. I'm going to do this right. And I'm going first.
All right, go ahead.
All right. Okay, 1 for me. 1 for you.
Okay.
2 for me. 1, 2 for you. 3 for me. 1, 2,
I don't
3
like
for
it
you.
either.
Okay, that's good. All right.
You got one left.
1 left. All right. I suppose you want this.
You get it.
What?
You get it. You get it.
You realize?
You get it.
How about that, everybody? I got something out of them. Hey, how about that? All right. Let's jump into baseball.
All right, good. Let's do it.
Okay? Let's do something. You know, we always, every one of these shows, you're going to be in every one of our shows, and we're going to do a whole lot of them. Today,
that's good.
we're featuring you. And I have, from my baseball collection, I have a baseball. You've never seen this, and I'm going to pick this off. You pick it up, look at it, and then I'll tell you the story of the ball, and then you see if you can tell me anything about the 1 or more people who have signed this ball.
Good.
Okay?
I look forward to it.
You
Come on.
ready?
Yes.
Here we go.
Ooh. Ooh. Can I have this? I like it.
Well, you can have it for a few minutes.
Well, it's Mickey Mantle, the great center fielder for the
Okay.
Yankees, and Ted Williams.
Okay,
of
now
the
let
Red
me.
Sox.
If you notice,
Mantle signed it on top.
Mantle signed it on top. Okay, Williams signed it. The story of the ball, you hold it from,
right.
is that Ted Williams hit that ball as a home run over Mickey Mantle's head in Yankee Stadium in right center field. And after the game, the man who caught the ball brought his son over and waited outside the Boston locker room, and Williams came out, and they told him that he hit the home run as they caught it, and would he sign it for his son? And Williams said, sure, and walked away. Mickey Mantle happened to see this take place. Mantle walked over, and he said to the father and son, I saw Ted sign that ball. You know, he hit that ball over my head, so I want to sign it over his name, which he did. So on that entire ball, on that little section of that entire ball, both signatures are there with Mickey Mantle's signature over Ted Williams. That's the story of that ball.
That's beautiful.
So it's kind of interesting that the rivalry there. So
I think
what about those two guys? How would you contrast them?
Well, they're very different. Mickey Mantle had about an 18-year career from 1950 to 68. He had 534 home runs in his career. Ted Williams, on the other hand, played longer. Ted Williams won 6 batting titles, 2 of them at 42, 43, 2 in 47, 48, and 2 in 58, 59. Mantle only won 1, but Mantle won a Triple Crown in 1956. So they were both first ballot Hall of Famers, terrific ball players.
Okay, you're a franchise owner. You have a chance to acquire one of these players, but not both. You have to choose. Which one of these players would you take?
That's easy. That Williams.
You take Williams.
Williams, yeah.
For his offense.
Well, his offense, and he was not a bad fielder, but
Right.
he was kind of a moody guy, and
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
I think I'd agree with you there. Williams had a longer career. There's a trivia question about Ted. The answer is Ted Williams. The question is, who was John Glenn's wingman during the Korean War?
That's good.
Okay, back to general baseball. I was watching a program the other day where these two guys, media announcers, sports guys, picked who they thought were the greatest baseball player of all time. One of them picked Babe Ruth. The other one picked Barry Bonds. And they had their reasons and they discussed it. If I were to ask you that question, in fact, I will ask you this question. Who would you say is the greatest baseball player of all time and why?
Well, without any question, it's Ty Cobb.
Ty Cobb.
Ty Cobb won 12 batting titles. His lifetime average is 367, which is almost 10 points higher than number 2, which was Shoeless Joe Jackson. Yeah. So Cobb, without any question. Barry Bonds played in the steroid era, and the size of his head grew from whatever it was, 3 or 4 sizes.
Yeah.
And,
changed hats frequently.
Yeah, and he was tainted by that era.
Yeah.
I think.
Ruth, on the other hand, was a media guy.
Well, you know, but you could make a case for Ruth because
he popularized.
after the Black Sox scandal, he brought baseball back with his bat.
Right, and his personality, and
he was terrific.
Unique, right? Okay, well, baseball is our national pastime, and you know a lot about it. And I'm just going to warn you right now, during the program, off the top of my head, I'm going to just say something. And the rules are you have to respond to it. Okay?
Yeah, if I miss any, I'll give you $100 right cash.
Okay, that's fair enough. I could use it. Okay. All right. So today's show is about Ed Pappas.
Who's that?
And that's you. And we're going to talk, you and I, about yourself because I want to hear from your lips who you are, how you grew up and all that. And then the second part of the show, we're going to have a panel. Of people who know you really well. And I know you don't like to talk about yourself, so I'm going to play a little bit of a game, all right? What I want you to do is assume that somebody wrote a biography of you and got it all wrong. So you're here to straighten the ledger here. You're here to get it right.
Okay.
So you're going to have to talk about yourself whether you want to or not. What I'd like to do is start right way back about your parents, how they got here in Detroit, where you were born, and what your early childhood was like. So go ahead. Let's start with your mom and dad.
Well, my mom and dad were both immigrants. They were born in Asia Minor, which is very close to Greece.
Your dad's name was?
His name was John.
Okay.
John Pappas.
Okay.
And my mother's name was Daisy Pappas.
All right.
And she was also a Pappas before she married him, so she
Really?
did not change her name.
Common name.
Yes, it is. Anybody that's got a priest in the family becomes Pappas because that means
Sure.
Papas
Sure.
in Greek. And
Sure. Sure.
so anyway, my grandfather was a Greek Orthodox priest. My dad came over in 1918, and I wish he had taken notes because he could have given me a report on the 1919 Black Sox scandals, but he didn't do it. He didn't do it. And then my mother joined him about 7 or 8 years later. He came back and forth 2 or 3 times, and he became a restaurateur.
Settled in Detroit.
Settled in Highland Park, actually.
Highland Park.
Yeah.
Okay. And you were born in Highland Park.
I was born in Detroit.
Detroit.
And then we finally moved to Highland Park, and I went to Highland Park High School and
Right.
Highland Park Junior
Okay.
College.
What kind of restaurant did your dad have?
He had several different kinds, but he finally settled on Detroit's famous Coney Islands. So he had a little restaurant called John's Coney Island,
Okay.
and I worked in it and my sister worked in it, and my brother worked in it too.
Great way to start
Yeah, right.
going. Yeah. You are named Edward John after your father. Where's the Edward come from?
Well, my grandfather's name was Ephthemi, which translates to Edward in Greek.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So here you are in Highland Park. And were you raised in Highland Park, or did you move out of Highland Park?
No, we stayed in Highland
So
Park.
you went to Highland Park schools?
Yes, all
Okay.
the way through.
Any early school memories that you'd like to share?
Well, when we moved into Highland Park, I had to leave Burroughs Junior High and I went to Highland Park Junior High School. And we had, fairly decent Greek community in Highland Park, and it was really terrific. And I got a job at Fromm's Hardware Store selling, outboard motors and
Sure.
rifles and all that stuff. It was a sporting goods, and it was it was a store that had everything. Their motto was, "You will find it at Fromm's."
How about that?
Yeah.
Early family life. How would you characterize your parents? And you had a sister and a brother. Talk about your early growing up years. Let's say 10, 12 years old and so on. What were your parents like as growing up?
Father was very severe, very strong, but he recognized that I had a memory, and so he was fascinated with the Bible. So he made me memorize, for example, a whole chapter, let's say, of the book of Romans. And so we'd go out for a picnic, and they would stick me on a picnic table, and I would recite these 16 verses in Greek. And then they'd throw me in the air and celebrate me. And I got fascinated with that.
Sure.
And then I discovered box scores. And the customers would come in and say, "Well, how did Hank Greenberg do today?" And I said, "Well, he had 2 home runs, got 3 out of 4, and he's now batting .295. And so I got that kind of cemented in me this love of baseball.
They'd come to this kid if they wanted information on
Any
baseball?
information.
How about
and
that?
then that kind of validated me. And so they'd come in, and I would spout off this baseball stuff.
Do you remember your
as a-
first ball game that you attended as a
I
kid?
do. 1941.
Uh-huh.
The Philadelphia Athletics, and we would sit in the left field stands, and we would be screaming, "We want a homer! We want a homer!" And it was great. And seeing the field for the first time was magical.
That was Briggs Stadium.
Briggs Stadium.
Briggs Stadium.
They had just become Briggs Stadium.
Right.
It had changed from
Navin
Navin Field.
right,
Yes.
Right. You got your hot dog and your
Well, I didn't need a hot dog because I got the hot dogs at work.
at
when
work.
I
Right.
worked.
So you went to the ball game, and how did you know that this would become your favorite sport? This would become your
Well, there was
passion?
nothing else though, Jim. There were 6 teams in hockey, and there were maybe 12 teams in football, and but there were 16 teams in baseball. And baseball started in April and went all the way through September, and so it was something that kind of established itself in my heart, actually, rather than my mind. And so I've got all this trivia
Yeah.
that nobody cares about. See, I go someplace and I say, somebody says, "Well, I know a lot about baseball." I say, "Can you name the 12 players who have won 4 batting titles, because Cabrera just won his 4th last year.
Right.
And so, they can't name that, and
Right.
it's a tough one.
But you can.
But you can't either.
No, I can't.
Yeah.
But I can just go along and say something like 1935 Tigers, the G-Men. Who were they?
That's so easy.
Come
geez.
on.
Greenberg, Gehringer, and Goose Goslin.
How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's only 3.
And Gerald Walker.
That's
was
4.
4.
Okay.
Yeah, the G-men they call
The
them.
G-men.
Yeah.
See, look at. How about that, guys? Back to Ed Pappas, the student. Okay, you in your Highland Park schools and Highland Park. What memories do you have? Was there any teacher that especially comes back to in your mind as someone that really
Yeah.
influenced you?
Yeah, there was a Miss Menard. She was an English teacher, and I got really interested in composition and in literature. And we would sit in the front row, and she would be lecturing, and I was with one of the ball players who played with Billy Pierce, who was from our school, and he went on for a great career with the White Sox. And we'd say, "Yes, Miss Menard," "No, Miss Menard," and we'd take our notes.
Take your notes,
Yeah, she
yeah.
was very influential.
In
yeah.
you, yeah, okay.
And I finished the 12 years and then the 2 years free college at that point, and that's when I went to Wayne.
Right.
And but by that time, the Korean War had started, and I got drafted.
Sure. Well, let's go back to your high school years just for a minute. What activities were you in? Did you participate in sports?
I was
music,
in forensic. I was in
forensics,
forensic,
debate?
yeah.
Okay.
And I also played a musical instrument.
What did you play?
I played the accordion.
How about that? Do they still have that? Is it?
Well, when we were moving
is
from the
that-
house in Warren to Rochester Hills, there was this old accordion,
Squeeze box.
and my
right?
wife
Squeeze box.
forced me to take it with me, and it's now in our new house. I haven't opened
Sitting
it up.
there?
There'll be moths coming out of it.
Can
right
you
now.
imagine Ed Pappas playing the accordion?
Well,
Okay.
I've got a little kind of a cup that I can put outside of it, so if I play it, people can put quarters and
There,
dimes
you're
in
right.
there.
You're right. Play for the money.
yeah, that's it.
That's pretty good.
Squeeze box, that's what it was called. Yeah.
You graduated from high school, 2 years of college. Where'd you go?
Uh,
At college?
the first I went to Highland Park
Highland Park Community College,
yeah, because
okay.
it was free.
Right.
And then I transferred to Wayne.
To Wayne State. Okay.
And I got after I came back from from Germany.
When you were drafted before you went to Wayne or during the time at Wayne?
During the time at Wayne.
Okay. That would have been 1952.
52.
52. Okay.
And they sent me to Germany, and so I got a chance to go from Germany to Greece and to see my paternal grandfather,
How about that?
who was 93 at the time and blind, and so he would feel me and kiss
Really?
me,
How
and he
about
would say,
that?
"John's boy." I was John's boy.
Sure.
It was really thrilling.
Oh.
Thrilling to see him
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Then I came back and finished my degree at Wayne in English, and I had a really strong minor in speech. And I was kind of fascinated by communication, and I got my first job at Pershing High School.
Where
on the
were
east
you in
side.
your life when you decided you'd like to be a teacher in education?
Well, I'll tell you, it came real quickly because initially I decided I was going to become an accountant. And after 3 accounting classes, I said, "This is not for me." You know, they'd ask, "What was your favorite book in the Bible?" I'd say Numbers.
Yeah.
That's a little joke. But so I loved literature, and then I became the debate coach. And that's where I met your wife,
Right.
who was
right,
a great
right.
debater.
So did you apply to other schools besides Pershing or?
No, I had 2 or 3 interviews.
Right.
I had one interviewed downriver at Lincoln Park, but Pershing had a nice reputation, and
Right.
it was very close to Denby.
Right.
And
Well, we're going to get into that
Okay.
in the second part. I want to go back a little bit and have you tell us about your mom.
oh, she was a saint. She was terrific. She would bail me out anytime I was in trouble
With your
my,
dad?
with my dad.
Yeah. Which
my
was
dad,
which
my-
was
which
every day.
often, yeah.
Yeah. Right.
He would send me back from the restaurant. He said, "Go out the back door and go home." He'd fire me. I've been fired about 7 times by him. And she'd say, "It's okay." It's like that commercial you see, "You can't lift that hammer," you
Right,
know.
yeah.
So anyway, I was She was terrific. Yeah, she was really
Very
great.
supportive all the way.
All the way. Yeah.
Tell us about your sister and brother.
Sister was 2 years older, and my brother was 5 years younger.
Right.
Sister passed away. My brother still lives
And
in
your
Oregon.
sister's name was
Evelyn.
Evelyn, okay.
And Tom is my brother.
And what Evelyn went on to a career or
Yeah, no, she was
full-time?
primarily a stay-at-home mom.
Full-time mom.
She had three girls.
Okay. And Tom had a career.
Tom had a career. He came to Wayne and got his PhD in history from Michigan State,
Okay.
and taught at a private school for a while, and then he did something. Nobody knows what he did. He
Right.
maybe with the CIA. I don't know.
Who knows?
Right.
Okay. But you remain close all these years.
Yeah, we have.
Okay, that's great. Well, Ed, you certainly had a very interesting upbringing, and obviously,
Very, very fortunate though, because I had really good mentors. I had my mentor at Pershing was the department chair, whose name was Ted Baruch.
right.
And he saw something in me because after the second year, he turned the debate program that he had coached for 30 years over to me, and that kind of validated
Of
me.
course, yeah. Did he hire you at Pershing?
Yeah, he was my
Okay.
first department head,
Okay.
and
You mentioned a mentor in school, grade school. Who else?
well, then there's
Your father had to
My-
be because
well, he was to
his
some
work
extent.
ethic had to be a role model for
well,
you.
another his work ethic was good. My wife was a mentor. I didn't talk about her.
Not
I
yet.
met her in Chicago at some kind of convention, and we became really fascinated with each other. And I married her in 1954, which was the year the Giants swept the. And I always would do this, and she'd get mad at me because I'd remember all of the dates of our children. Like Karen was born in '57. That was the year the Milwaukee Braves won their first World Series.
How about that?
And she'd get mad. But she was a mentor. She really was. Because I was working in a hardware store, as I told you. And she told me one day, she
How
said,
old were you at the time?
at the time
when
I was
you met
about
her?
22.
22. You were through college, but you
Yeah.
weren't teaching yet. No, you weren't
No,
through.
I was teaching. I was working part-time at the hardware store.
Okay.
And she said, and so, Ed, are
So
you going to...
before you went to Wayne, you met Eunice.
Yeah.
Eunice is his wife, and
And she said, are you going to sell paint the rest of your life? And I got the hint. She
Right.
wanted me to go back to school. I went back part-time, and then I quit everything and went full-time.
right.
And then we
So
had
you were out of
Karen.
the service when you
Oh,
met,
yeah,
met
yeah.
her. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's and you enjoyed how many years of marriage together?
Oh, 57.
57.
I beat
years?
DiMaggio by one. DiMaggio had 56 straight games, remember?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Wow, that's You were a marvelous couple. I was privileged to know her, and I've said frequently that there aren't very many people I knew who could walk into a room and light up that room just by
she was
smiling.
terrific.
Yeah,
She
she
was
was
great,
great.
yeah.
So you met her in '54. Married in what year?
No, we met her in 51, married her
Married
in 54.
And then
We had Karen in 57,
57.
and then EJ, who just had his 55th
EJ,
birthday.
that's Edward John Jr.
Edward John III.
The third.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
So wait a minute. So they called your father John, but he was really Edward John?
my grandfather was
Grandfather.
Edward John. He
Oh,
was
so you
number
called
one.
the third, right?
And then I was,
Yeah, Edward John. All right. Yeah.
yeah,
So the third. It went by EJ.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Your
right.
second child, born in what year?
61.
61.
Tigers finished second that year. And in 68, the Tigers won the
Tigers won the
championship.
champion.
And that's
David.
David.
David is-
yeah.
That's pretty good. Hank Greenberg. Tell us about him.
Hank Greenberg hit 58 home runs and supposedly was going to tie Babe Ruth. And they started walking him. Hank Greenberg was Jewish, and they didn't want to have somebody who was Jewish break Babe Ruth's record. Babe Ruth, the great icon. And so there was anti-Semitism, as you wouldn't believe. And so he really caught it. But he was a terrific first baseman. And then they got another guy named Rudy York, so they put him at first, and Greenberg volunteered to go to the outfield. And so he's one of the first one of the guys to win an MVP at two different positions.
I remember the old saying, Greenberg on third. Greenberg on third. And as a kid, I never really understood what that meant. But I don't know, does that ring a bell to you, or maybe it was just something I heard?
No, I think,
okay.
you know,
But he didn't hit a lot of triples.
No,
Maybe-
but he was a home run hitter, and unfortunately, he played his whole career with Detroit, had a terrific career when he came back from the service in '46, and then he wore a Yankee uniform for something because they couldn't find a Tiger uniform that fit him, and Walter O'Briggs got mad and traded him to Pittsburgh.
Wow. And they created an entire corner for him.
They
Yeah.
Greenberg Gardens,
Yeah.
but it was sad because,
Yeah,
and then he
sure.
quit after that year.
Yeah.
So he finished in '47.
Great role model.
Terrific.
Took a lot of guff, really.
He did. He helped Jackie Robinson a lot.
I'm
Because
sure.
Jackie came in '47.
Right.
That
right.
his last year was
Right,
Jackie's first year.
Yeah. He didn't take nearly as much as Jackie Robinson, though.
No,
Jackie-
nobody took that
Nobody.
much.
Jackie Robinson. To me, Jackie Robinson was the greatest man to ever play
Without
the
question.
game. The greatest
Yeah.
the greatest man.
Everybody ought to see that '42 movie.
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, he was tremendous role model for all of us. Really. Yeah. Anyway, so after you're married, you've got kids, and then you went up to
Then I
Wayne?
started working on my PhD, okay?
right at Wayne.
Because I had the GI Bill, and I was getting $160 a month when my daughter was born, and I was getting the GI Bill. See, so I started working on a PhD and finished the master's and got the PhD, and I got an offer from George Bowman. He
Who
said,
was
you know,
George Bowman?
He was the chairman of the department at Wayne.
Okay.
He said, we need somebody with your background at Wayne. And I called my wife immediately and I said, George Bowman just offered me a job. And so I took a,
And you said, you mean you're not going to sell paint anymore?
no, I talked with her about it because I took a pay cut to go to Wayne, but I thought I want to try it. And I really liked university
Oh
teaching.
sure. Oh yeah. And Wayne State was just.
It was a terrific department.
It still is.
It is
It's-
good. It's very good.
This wonderful university. I'm not exaggerating. I mean,
No, it's good. Yeah.
It kind of holds your heart,
Right.
as
And
alumnus. And
remember the last show we did with Matt
Yeah.
Seeger? We got a good dean now too.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it's time to bring in the panel to
Good.
talk about you and your background and so on.
Can we talk about something other than me though, Jim?
I'm afraid not.
Oh,
No,
jeez.
the spotlight is on you.
Help me, you guys.
My legendary.
Jeez.
What do you think? Should we continue to talk about him? What?
Thanks.
All right. Okay. So we'll take a break now, and we'll come back after the break, and we'll bring in our panel.
Thanks for the ball. That's beautiful.
We are Wayne State University.
We are Wayne State University.
We are Wayne State University.
We are Wayne State University, and we are changing the world.
We made an indelible contribution
to a city,
To a nation.
and to the world.
Just like we have for nearly 150 years.
We're made up of some of the smartest
and toughest.
The most tenacious, persistent,
and innovative students.
Who have ever sought knowledge.
We live on campus, we commute.
We're local, we're national,
We're international.
We're the most diverse student body in Michigan.
That's important because if you want your point of view to be understood,
You better learn to understand another.
better learn to understand another's. We've accomplished a lot in 1 year. We made an economic impact, we made a medical
we made
impact,
a medical impact.
We made a social
We made a
impact.
social impact.
We made a scientific
we made a
impact.
scientific impact.
We made an academic impact.
We made a local impact.
We're recognized by the Carnegie Foundation.
for having very high research activity.
The National Institutes of Health awards us grants
That improved the lives of thousands of babies and moms globally.
We're one of only 3 universities in
Only
the state.
3 universities in the state who are part of the University Research Corridor.
We make discoveries here that aren't being made anywhere else in the world.
Anywhere else in the world.
Beyond our 200-acre campus of green space and walking paths, you can have Detroit. threshold to the great big world.
Great big world.
We'll put our experience up against any other.
Because long before there was a movement
To save the city.
Way before it was cool to wear t-shirts that said Detroit versus everybody.
Before the hipsters, the slow rolls.
The lofts.
The brew pubs and the segways.
there was a place that was thought-provoking.
Unapologetic.
Hands-on.
Learn as you work with no excuses.
A place that said, here's your chance.
A place to invent,
Or reinvent.
To experiment.
And produce.
to take some knocks.
But never break.
But never break.
That place was and is Wayne State University.
So from us to you.
Welcome to Wayne State. And remember, always
Aim higher.
Aim higher.
Aim higher.
Aim higher.
Aim higher.
We're back. Okay. Welcome back to our show featuring the legendary Ed Pappas. You saw in the first part where Ed talked about his background and how he grew up in Highland Park and right through to military service and then Wayne State, his marriage and his background. Now we're going to bring on some people who know him well. And the first person is a very experienced speech therapist working with highly disadvantaged students for Macomb County Intermediate School District. She is a master therapist. She's also Ed's oldest child, his daughter, Karen Pappas Zech, right here. Okay. Our second panelist is the person I know pretty well. She's a former debater at Pershing High School for Ed. She debated for him, went on to Wayne State, became a state champion forensics oratory champion, and she also she was a teacher, and she went into industry, became a #1 recruiter in the staffing industry with more trophies and honors and awards than she had walls to put on. Highly experienced, highly recognized. She also is my wife of 52 years. Please welcome Millie Irwin. Our third guest taught with Ed Pappas. He is a graduate of Castech High School, a native Detroiter, came out of high school, went into the Air Force, and was put immediately into school to learn Russian. He picked up the Russian language through intensified training, came back, went to Wayne State, continued to study Russian, and then he went in 1958 to teach at Pershing High School with Ed Pappas, and he can tell us about Ed as a teacher and as a colleague. The interesting thing and why he's here, not just because he taught with Ed, but because they've been lifelong buddies ever since. Please welcome Nick Toyas. And our final panelist is a person that has been so influential in Ed's career here at Wayne State and influential in a lot of careers. She is an academic specialist, and she works not only with administrators and faculty, but also with students. She's a master counselor. She virtually makes people in the Department of Communication look good. She is the heart and soul of the Wayne State Department of Communication. A wonderful person, longtime friend of Ed's, who hired her, by the way, considers her his best hire. But she's a wonderful person. Please welcome Vicki Dallas. Welcome, Vicki. So here we are. Welcome, everybody. We're going to talk about this wonderful guy and how it all started. And our first part, Ed talked about his background, his upbringing, Highland Park. Father owned a Coney Island, and how he learned the restaurant business as a toddler practically, and then went into other business, how he met his wife Eunice and went on Wayne State, got a degree, and so on. You people know him from different perspectives. And so we're going to start with you, Karen, as his oldest daughter. What was it like, and please talk about your mom as well. What was it like growing up with your father and mother and that family?
Well, growing up in our family was probably not typical from the standpoint that we didn't do a lot of television watching. We did a lot of talking. You know, we would have conversations. We would sit around the table and talk. We would sit around the living room and talk. You know, my friends would talk about, did you watch such and such, TV show last night? And I wouldn't know what they were talking about because we didn't do a lot of that. So that was kind of one thing that was unique to having my dad as my dad. But the other kind of interesting thing about him is that, you know, the two of them were a real unit, and they kind of morphed into each other's likes and dislikes, and provided a real united front. My dad was a lover of Detroit before it was cool to be a lover of Detroit. You know, he has been a champion for this city as long as I've known, as long as I can remember. We would take trips to Belle Isle. We would take trips down to, after the riots times, we would cruise the cities around. He popped us in the car and drove us down to Detroit after the Tigers won the pennant in 1968, when my mom was pregnant with my brother, like ready to deliver my brother, just about. So I've always had this love of the city vicariously, and I've grown up with it, and I kind of thought that was normal. I grew up in Warren, and there weren't a lot of people in Warren that loved the city of Detroit.
Sure.
They moved to Warren because they didn't want to be in the city of Detroit.
When's the first time your dad took you to a baseball game?
I don't really remember my first trip to the game, but I do remember one trip when he took my son and my daughter and I, after I had my son was 5, my daughter would have been about 8. And if you've ever been anywhere with my dad, he doesn't, make sure that you're all together and walking. He pretty much gets to wherever he wants to go. So I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they're mobbed on opening day, and the Tigers, I don't know what year that would have been, Dad. You probably remember that. But anyway, it was
93, I
It was
think.
traumatic for me because trying to keep track of these 2 little kids and keep my eye on, where are you going, Dad? I don't know where we're headed here.
Ed very well, and that's not surprising.
Yeah.
But how did your mom deal with the baseball in your life?
My mom dealt with all of my father's idiosyncrasies the same. She put up with everything. She just, he'd tell a joke 800 times, and every single time she would
that sounds familiar.
Go along with it. She loved being his partner and his helpmate. She loved being the chairman's wife when he was chair of the department. My mom was had the gift of hospitality. It wouldn't be anything for her to just say, "Oh, come on over for supper." You never came over for dinner. You always came over for supper.
Sure.
And she would throw dinner down that would be amazing, and she made it look like she just, went home and had something all
Karen,
done.
give us an example of your mom and dad in a typical weekend, let's say at home.
Dad spent a lot of time in his office. We had in our basement. He had a little office that was kind of closed off, so he would spend a lot of time down there.
Keep out sign on the door.
Pretty much, we didn't mess with him, especially when it was time for him to do the bills. We all knew that wasn't a good time to hang out and make noise. And Mom was more of the homebody, keeping everything going, cooking, cleaning, fixing, doing.
Did you learn to cook from your mom?
Yeah, absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. In fact, Vicki just told me today that she mentioned she used one of my mom's recipes for a Greek casserole kind of thing.
Is Karen as good as Eunice as a cook?
Karen,
You go there once in a while for.
She's terrific. She's really good, but there's no one like Eunice. Eunice had her mother teach her too, and so her
right.
mother was meticulous. If it didn't turn out right, she'd throw it out.
Right.
Really.
Right. Comment just about your brothers briefly.
Oh God.
EJ.
My brothers that should have been the ones that were here to talk about him.
Oh, I think it's great.
Yeah, I have my brother EJ, who's a couple years younger than I am. He is in Boston. All three of us went to Wayne State. Me only for a couple years, and then my brothers graduated from Wayne. And I think that's probably, this story will probably show you the difference between me and my brothers. When I started taking classes in communication department, because as a speech pathologist you have to start with some of those undergrad prerequisites, the professor would pull the roster out and start taking names, and he'd come down to Pappas and he'd go, Karen, and they'd look up and he'd go, are you? And I go, yeah, Dr. Pappas is my dad. And I would be all embarrassed and, self-conscious and worried and whatever. And so I decided, my good friend wanted to go to Michigan State in the worst way. And so I decided after a couple of classes like that, that I was going to go too. I was going to leave and go away because I didn't want to have that stigma or whatever you want to call it. My brothers, on the other hand, both were like, when the professor would come down and go, E.J. Pappas, he'd go, yep, that's me, and my dad's the chairman. Yep, that's right. So they both were more.
And your youngest brother?
My brother Dave is also is a grad of Wayne, and he is living in Indianapolis. E.J. lives in Boston.
Right.
And Dave lives in Indy with his wife.
Wonderful family.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Millie, you debated for Ed at Pershing High.
Right.
You've known him for a total of 58 years. Can you believe that? Because you're
time.
here not because you were just a student, but because you and I actually have been friends of Ed and Eunice for all these years. And you know Ed longer than I have, because I didn't meet Ed until 61 or something like that. And so remember Ed for us.
Well, I was 15 years old when, I went to Pershing. 15, and that's when I met Ed Pappas.
And you were 17, right?
And quite frankly, he talked earlier about how he was mentored, and that was wonderful to hear that, because I think that probably was what made him into a mentor himself. So he became my mentor for sure, because I was just a kid from Detroit, raised in a family that no one had gone to college, and so I had very few aspirations as to what I was going to do with my life, and I didn't really have the mentoring. My parents were great, but they didn't have an understanding of how higher education impacts your life. So because I was his student, I became interested in debate, because of course he was the debate coach, and really saw that I had some talent in that area. I was able to speak pretty well, and good communication skills, and that was a nurturing aspect. And then when Ed was a real mentor, because he's the one that said, you need to go to college if you're going to make something of your life.
The influence you had on Millie, see, in debate there's an affirmative side and a negative side. You argue the affirmative arguments or the negative arguments. And that's why we've been married 52 years. That's why our living room has always had 2 speaker stands.
At any rate,
No.
at any rate, it was a important. He was a very important person in my life, and even I became, when I went to Wayne State, and I did go to college, and then I decided I was going to be a teacher, English and speech teacher, of course, and when I was a senior and working on my final year, I had to, go and be a student teacher. And of course, who did I get to be a student teacher for? Ed Pappas at Pershing. So I ended up going back to Pershing after high school, and he was my mentor once again to get me ready for, for the big leagues, getting out into the world and being a teacher, which was wonderful. And there are very few, I think, and we've commented about this before, Ed and I, that there are very few students that stay in touch with a teacher, through all the years of your life, like we have. Yeah. At least once a year on the phone. And then later, Ed and Eunice would get together and have lunch, and or dinner, or there was always a connection, through the many years of our lives, and that was I think a very unique thing.
Millie, when you first met Karen, how old was Karen?
Well, when I first met her, she was 2. She came to our house.
Very well, don't you?
Oh, yeah, very well.
She came to our house with
Ed and Eunice brought
and
Karen
Eunice,
over to visit your house.
They visit our house and have dinner. My parents had them for dinner because they too knew how important the relationship was, and they wanted to keep that going.
That?
Well, yeah, see, I was going to say that Millie, the class that she took, the senior English class, which was college prep, it was in room 327, and she sat, there were 5 rows that went all the way back, and she sat at the row right next to the desk, the teacher's desk, in the second seat. There was Millie Michalski, and in front of her was, who was the other? There was another.
Siegert, Bob?
No, Paul Siegert was
Paul
in that
Siegert,
class,
he was behind me.
And Dennis Clinthorne was in that.
That's
a bunch of really bright kids.
Can you believe that memory, everybody? Can you believe that?
But I stayed in touch with Millie because she went on to to college.
Sure.
And she won the state championship in oratory.
Right.
And I remember the title of her speech, "Broken Windows."
That's right.
That was a good. Or can you do it now?
Oh no, I don't think so.
I think it started like that. Broken Windows.
It did.
It went like this.
Well.
Broken windows. Thousands of
broken
windows.
Glass on the ground.
Shattered, smashed, broken glass on the ground.
No, but she was good. She was good, and then she debated for George.
Yeah.
When she finished college, I said, "You're going to Wayne, and you're going to debate." And I called George Ziegmuller, the debate coach. I said, "I'm sending you one of my top debaters." And Judy Turner was your partner.
Right.
Judy probably be about 75 now, huh?
Low blow.
But no, it's true. Ed introduced me to George Ziegmuller, which was another great introduction.
Incredible,
because George then took over, and he was such a fantastic debate coach.
Well, that's
I was very
program.
fortunate.
Our next program will feature the
George.
legendary George Ziegmuller.
Yeah,
so
much deserved.
Really, as far as all the programs go, Ed and George are the only living legendaries, so that's why we're going to feature them first.
Am I living?
You are.
Yes.
I think you are.
Okay.
Really? Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll tell you if you're living or not.
Oh, really?
Give me the Detroit Tigers. Name the ones who won the batting title.
Cobb won 12. Heilman won 4. Gehringer won 1 in 37. Then in 49, Kell. And then 59, Harvey Keene. 61, Norm Cash. The latest one was Ordonez, Magli Ordonez, in 2008.
Wasn't it Cabrera? His batting time?
And Cabrera, 4 of them. I said that before.
Yeah.
You weren't listening, Nick. Come on, Nick. Pay attention.
You believe that? I just nailed him with a trivia question. He nailed us right back. How about that, everybody? Tremendous. All right. Nick Toyas. Nick, you're here not because you just taught with Ed. You're here because you guys have been lifelong buddies.
58 years.
58, yeah, right?
58 miserable years. I can't believe it.
Right.
I'm very tolerant.
It takes something to become a lifelong friend being a teacher. I mean, my years of high school teaching, I made some friends, but not like that. You guys, what was it about you two, do you think, Nick, that caused you to become like magnets to each other and such close friends?
Could have been a Helene in both of us, coming from Greek parentage.
That started
and
it,
when in 58, when he introduced himself to me on a basketball floor, we had a tournament there, and from then on, he invited me to come to his special room up there where Millie had gone so often. And so I went up there, and one thing led to another, and I got married that year, 58. And the next thing I knew, he's inviting my wife and me to see the kids and them. And it just kept going on like that. We just kept meeting in different places, lunch and stop. I was always the last, Pershing was always my last class. last 2 classes. And so I got a chance to drive with him to go to Wayne. Occasionally we met at Wayne, had a coffee or something. It just started that way, and I couldn't get away from him, and he didn't want me to get away from me. He just liked me so much.
Right.
Because he could dig me anytime he wanted.
Nick, what impresses you without, we're not going to embarrass him, so this is about him. So candidly, what kinds of things impressed you about Ed? What drew you to him, and what made you keep, because you're not the kind of person who would just attach themselves in friendship to anybody. You've had too much in your own background to not do that. So there had to be something there that attracted you to Ed that you had to admire.
One kind of example was, we mentioned Lee Mashmeyer. He was the blind student. He was in my Russian class, and one of the things that Ed had a problem with, or he had a problem with, which Ed was trying to correct, was using gestures for a blind student is not there. And he told me about how he had to work with Lee Mashmeyer to get him to do gestures while he was talking, emphasizing what he was with his hands. You can imagine standing there like this and talking, and it had a great impact on the judges, of course, who said...
How'd you do that, Ed?
Well, I'll tell you something that's so funny. Leland was just an incredible speaker, and he had a terrific speech. He gives a speech, and he gets 2 first-place votes and 1 third place. And I said to the third place, the guy who picked him third, I said, what about, that's a great speech. He said, no eye contact. I said, the guy's blind, how can he have eye contact? Gee, I was stunned, and it was a judge from Wayne. I said, how could he have eye contact? So, trying to teach him gestures was very difficult. I'd say, when you're going to make 3 points, you can say, I'm going to make 3 points, just put your hand up. But, a blind person can't do gestures.
They can't feel it.
They can't feel it, that's right. So anyway, he was a terrific guy. And
so how'd you work with him to do it?
Well, just, go through a speech and say, well, at this point, just raise your hand or just move a little bit forward.
Okay.
And he did real well because he won the state championship in American Legion speaking, and we traveled together, and that's when we left and went away, and my daughter, who was about 5 or 6, she goes, Leland, are you still blind?
Terrible.
You're never going to get away from that one, Karen.
All right, I'll give you a couple minutes to say something about Nick.
You want me to say something?
Sure.
Well, Nick was an outstanding, number one, an outstanding golfer, and I'm still irritated with him about that. And so he goes up north with me, maybe 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 times a summer, and we play golf 2 or 3 times. We play up there. We played the Palmer Park course many times together, and he was also a very good basketball player. And they had a Greek league, and he played against Eunice's brother. Paul played against Nick. And then my kids were starting to learn how to play basketball, EJ, and they learned how to use elbows from Nick.
Okay.
Nick was good with elbows.
Okay. What was it that sustained your interest at Pershing? What made you go over there?
It was the Tom Swifties.
Okay.
That's what did it, right? Tell them what those are.
You better tell them.
No,
It's been 50 years since I've been.
It's been a long time. It's just a word game, and we would also do.
What's a Tom Swiftie? I asked you, what is a Tom Swiftie? I asked fastly.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Well, that was something.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah.
Language things.
What was there that brought you?
They were language. That definitely language.
What was it that brought you together? I ask interestingly. Yeah, I mean, wasn't that? Is that
Yeah, something.
Well, it had something to do with it, but I think more or less it was just Ed's personality was kind of intriguing.
The thing that drew them to room 325A was my roommate up there. Frances Dunbar, beautiful woman.
Oh.
They would come up there, pretend talking to me, and they would be ogling her.
All right. Let's talk for a minute about Ted Baruch, who was your boss at Pershing. He hired you. Did Ted hire? No, Ted didn't hire you, did he?
No.
Okay.
Ted Baruch.
He was one of your mentors.
Oh, my heavens, yes.
Yeah.
When he turned that debate program over to me, not only did he do that, but then I had the speakers, the commencement speakers.
Right.
And so Millie was a commencement speaker in 1959. You remember what was the theme that year? Was it?
It was, it was education. I remember.
No, was it Frontiers?
maybe different frontiers. And I
Yeah,
had the
something like-
education as one.
Okay, because there were
Yeah.
5 of you
Right,
speakers.
absolutely.
You remember the speakers' names?
I remember some of them. Sue
Ben
Farley,
Taylor, Ben
Ben
Taylor,
Taylor,
and you.
Marilyn Letterson,
Marilyn
myself, and Al. What was his last
Casimir.
name? Casimir.
Oh my God, I got
Pretty
it.
good, huh?
He's not
Look at
even
that.
a ball player.
No, that was the 5.
Yeah, so Nick and I played a lot of basketball. Well, we played faculty staff team.
He was
The
good.
faculty would
He
play
was good to
against-
have on your team.
Oh my God, yes, he was good.
Well, we tried to stop him from his chucking, was always chucking the ball. You couldn't pass it to him and get it back. It was always a shot. But that's what I enjoyed
He's a
about it. He
shooter.
was he was a
Yeah.
good,
Shooter.
he was good company all the time.
Those are fun years, weren't
Yeah,
they?
we had some really good times together, you know.
Yeah.
And our wives, you know, kind of interacted nicely together. And
Well, that's
it was
another
good.
thing. Eunice, you couldn't have a meal over there having 5 or 6 courses. It was always, you didn't know which one to go for. There were so many things there, and she was such a phenomenal cook. And so beautiful. Her personality was so
Yes. Yeah.
spectacular.
Oh, yeah.
So let me tell you one real quick story because this is very recent. I went and got my taxes done yesterday, and the tax lady is in a very difficult spot. It's 12-mile Northwestern Highway, Telegraph. They all come together there, 696, and he got lost, so lost, and I've never heard the F word used as many times. He was so frustrated. He was
It's possible.
He was ready to leave and go home. I said, Nick, you can't go. You want me to call the Uber driver? He said, do something. He said, do
That's
something.
what I told him
He
to
said-
call.
He was so frustrated. Finally, I said, I'm standing right by the Subaru sign. He said, where the hell is it? So finally found me.
Good story.
It was only after another 45 miles of circling around that area. If you've ever been at Telegraph and 12 Mile
Yeah.
and 696 and Northwestern
Sure.
and the John Lodge. Oh
They all
my
come
God.
together. My God.
They do.
Well, let's move on.
Yeah, move on.
Let's move on.
Oh, yeah, it's
Ed gets a degree, has a family, moves to Wayne State in his career, and one thing leads to another, and suddenly Ed is elected chairman of the department. And along comes your best hire ever, Vicki Dallas.
No, she was the 4th best.
Oh,
The other side-
that's not what you said before.
That's right.
No, she was without question.
Yeah,
She
good
was-
thing she's about 10 feet away.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
Vicki, tell us about Ed. Characterize him first as a administrator, because the department, when you joined it, had just recently been split, and he had gone from a huge administration of several departments down to a smaller one.
No, actually, when I came aboard, we were a very large department.
Okay.
We were 5 areas. We had a very successful and large theater program. We had a program in communication disorders and sciences. We had a thriving oral interpretation program. There were a lot of students at that time that wanted to study oral interp. And we had the traditional speech communication part of the department, and then we had radio, television, and film.
So
And-
in
and then
effect,
that journalism. too.
And then
Right.
journalism.
Well,
So
in
it was
effect,
a
then,
very large, complex department.
Ed was what the dean does now.
Yes, we
You, in
operated.
effect, even though you're called chair of the department, your duties were what the dean's duties
Yeah,
are
that's
today.
right, that's right.
Yeah, we operated like a small college at the
Okay,
time.
then what happened?
Well, I mean, over time, there was a move to split the large College of Liberal Arts into smaller colleges.
Okay.
And there was a formation of a science college, there was a formation of a fine arts college. And what happened is communication disorders then moved to the science college, and theater moved to the fine arts college. And so it became a smaller department. We're still a fairly large department in the university, but not quite as large.
I happen to know that in your introduction when I talked about you, I didn't really get into it, but I happen to know that you're the core person in that department. And I don't want to embarrass you. I also happen to know that last graduation, you were selected to give the commencement address.
Yes.
How about that, everybody, huh? Vicki Dallas. Vicki Dallas. Vicki Dallas. Huh? So tell us about Ed as an administrator.
Well,
You know,
Ed,
he hired you, he's your boss. Then you became, now you're friends now, right?
Well,
And
we
that-
weren't
that's-
when he hired me. I mean, that came over time.
Right, that's what I
Yeah.
mean.
But,
He was your
uh,
boss, and then,
Mhm.
you know, now you're,
Ed was a staunch defender and advocate of the department. You know, in academics, there's always budget cuts, and everybody's, you know, scrambling to make ends meet and whatever. But Ed was always a huge defender, because he would go in to see one of the associate deans, and they would talk about, you know, each time we would take our enrollment numbers, and they would talk about, okay, which classes are you going to cut? And Ed would say, well, I can't cut any classes. I need all my classes. And then the dean would go, well, what about this class here that has a very low enrollment? And Ed would say, no, there's students in there that need this class. I am not going to cut this class. And so, you know, this would go on. But we would walk out, and typically we would not be cutting classes. So it was, you know, he was that way.
right.
And he was always an advocate for the students, always. And he was an advocate for the faculty in his program. I mean, he always would, you know, push you to get out in committees and, you know, to try to do things to make us look good within the university setting.
Did he succeed?
He did succeed.
Okay.
People, you know, under his tutelage did very well. We got promoted. You know, the department was very visible in the university community. So he was a very strong administrator.
Oh, that's great. Well, we're almost out of time, so I'm going back one at a time. I'm going to ask each of you to come up with one word. If you had to describe Ed Pappas in one word, who wants to go first?
I go first.
Okay, you go first.
He's very caring.
Caring. Okay.
Thank you.
Karen.
I'm going to say engaging, because he's never met a stranger. He will talk to anybody, and they walk away a friend, pretty much.
Okay. Millie.
Integrity, very high integrity.
So, caring.
She said caring.
He's caring.
I said
Engaging.
Engaging, integrity. Oh wow! Are you an oh wow? You're an oh
He's
wow,
that kind
Ed.
of guy, dedicated and
No, one word.
pleasure to be with. I can't put one word. Why one word? Pleasure to be with.
See,
The guy
you
who's always
Russian
great to be with.
speakers can't talk one.
You must talk as much as you can. Yes.
Okay. My word for Ed is awesome. And what do you think, everybody? Is this an awesome guy? Well, panel, thank you for being here. Thank you for talking about this wonderful guy, this
Thank
person
you.
we've known for many,
Thank
many
you.
years. And Ed, you've had a wonderful career, a great career. I've been honored by our long-term
Well, it's been
friendship.
really wonderful.
And,
You know,
you're one of a kind.
what I would mention, you know, I think Millie and Vicki were both on the committee when they had the party for me. And you know, they never have a party for somebody when the person leaves the chair. I've never seen a party. And this party they gave me was so big. I mean, it was this Athenaeum room was huge, and I don't know how many people were there. Was a lot of people there, and it was really an honor. And it was after that Eunice and I went to Greece to live for 1 year, and it was so, that was terrific. You know, I would teach these Greek students who were all trilingual, English, Greek, and either French or German or Italian or Spanish. It's incredible.
Wow. Well,
It's amazing.
let's finish. I'm going to give Ed a chance for one little bit of trivia. I'm going to ask you a question, and you can only say the man's name. It's a baseball player. Only say his name. That's all you can say. Don Lund played right field for the Detroit Tigers in 1953. He was followed by another player who became famous in 1954. Name the player who followed Don Lund.
That would be Al Kaline.
You're right. All right. Hey, hey. Now, you don't have time to do a half an hour on about Al Kaline. I know you can. Everybody, thank you so much for coming. Thanks to helping us honor this wonderful, wonderful man. And thanks for being here in the heart of Wayne State University, the University of Real People. And we'll see our next program will feature George Ziegelmuller. Ed will be back, and we'll see you then. So thank you and farewell.